The debate today on the tools and services that can be used for capital punishment reminds us once again that trade policy is an integral part of the EU's foreign policy. It is vital that we continue to develop values-based trade policies, as is very much the theme in the new trade policy of the Commission. My colleagues and I would like to thank the shadow rapporteurs for their collegial cooperation, during which we focused on updates needed to close the loopholes in the current EU regime. The anti-torture regulation combines prohibitions of goods on the one hand with licensing requirements for trade in listed goods on the other hand. It governs a ban of trade in so-called single-use torture and execution items and related technical assistance under Annex II. But it also looks at an authorisation system for multi-purpose items that could be misused for torture and executions, for example, lethal injections, and we see this in Annex III. And the overhaul of the existing EU's controls of trade in torture instruments has been long overdue. Now, in this update, we must ensure a right mix of EU legislative, administrative, judicial and external measures. And the absence of a multilateral export controls regime does complicate this task. Still, we seek coherence of the EU's export controls, including military, dual use, firearms and torture good lists, without subjecting items to duplicate controls and making things more complicated. The Commission proposes to strengthen the controls of torture goods to include certain medical substances and to broaden the scope to include brokering. And I support this kind of approach of necessary and proportionate controls without creating unnecessary burdens for legitimate trade. And in this regard, it is also key that we seek a more level playing field in Europe. At the same time, as we act now, our policies and systems should be future-proof and flexible to be able to adjust to changing technologies or changing realities elsewhere in the world. Specific item lists can provide clarity for exporters and importers to make it easier for them to comply. And we've also made sure that it is very clear and there's no doubt about legitimate access to medicines and pharmaceuticals, which of course for the EU is an important market and it must not be hindered by measures to curb the abuse in lethal injection. While we observe that foreign trade transactions are becoming more and more complex, we have to look for an effective set of enforcement measures, and this should also include the marketing and financial services that do take place and are related to this industry. We've asked for reporting and exchange of information between member states via a secure encrypted system, so that rejected licenses and other notifications or important information can be shared and can help states coordinate. And as the European Commission can more flexibly adapt the regulations and the items that are at stake, we do ask as a Parliament to be duly informed and involved. And we, at the last point, look to industry to take its own responsibility to make sure that the EU does not trade, broker, transfer or otherwise get involved with goods or services that are used for the death penalty or torture. Now, I believe, and I think all of our colleagues believe, that in this text we put forward concrete proposals for improvement in this file, all with the goal to make sure that the EU acts as a values-based global player and that this specific, quite technical aspect of trade is upgraded and implemented in a way that is both flexible and effective. Thank you.